What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday Night live stream. Today I have Ryan from Chumminghams Reef. How the heck are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Devin. Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. Excited to have you on today. You are definitely considered a hardcore reefer, and your new tank is looking pretty sweet. It is massive. I kind of dug through our YouTube videos today. I was looking at your old smaller ones, and now you consolidate into a big, massive tank. So you got 450-ish gallons packed full of coral.
Yep, that's right. I got a 450-gallon system that also I just added on a 70-gallon drop-off from Innovative Marine.
Oh, nice.
I put that in my wall. I'll give you guys a walkthrough of both of those systems later.
Ah, that's pretty awesome. So the main, I mean, it's going to be a rabbit hole of everything today, but I guess kind of the main thing we kind of want to touch on was kind of nutrients versus nutrition to an extent of it. I know you're a big fan of feeding your coral and providing that nutrition to your corals. So,
yep, go ahead.
Yep. I guess I was going to say, how important do you think it is to feed your corals on top of just letting light and photosynthesis do their part?
I think that in regards to the overall health of the coral, the resilience of the coral, if you have a well-fed specimen, it has more tissue, which protects it against from swings in chemistry. So if you have an ultra-low nutrient system, I find that those systems are really sensitive to swings in chemistry, especially alkalinity, which is one of my big three, temperature and salinity. So if those things tend to change, or you don't really have a good handle on one of those three things, a high nutrient system will be more stable and safe for you.
So it can handle fluctuations more.
It definitely can. I think that this is most certainly true in regards to like SPS systems, which mine is like an SPS dominant system, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a mixed reef.
Mixed reef, heavy on the SPS. Yeah.
So I think that in regards to SPS in particular, like if you've ever imported corals from Indonesia or Australia or whatever, especially Australia, they come in and you look at these SPS colonies and they have like a really, really thin layer of tissue that's overlying them. And they're not fully colored up. Oftentimes they show up pretty bleached, or they can show up pretty colored too. But they're at that stage, they're really, really sensitive to fluctuations in swings. And that's why that you see people that actually grow their corals, like how I do it, aquacultured only, have healthier and more like sustainable and resilient specimens to pass along to a fellow reefer.
Nice. Now, have you imported them directly to yourself? Like, have you taken freshly imported ones and colored them up, made them happy?
I did it once.
Yeah, how did it work out?
It was really, really, really difficult. So props out to all the LFSs out there that do it for their main gig. Mucho respect, because one time, like, I try to make my corals as clean as possible. I do have a few pests like Aptasia. I have a couple Astorina starfish, which honestly for me, I don't really believe that those are like a problem. Like they're actually kind of free cleanup crew. Some people will say they eat zoas. Some people will say that they go after LPS if given the opportunity. That's not been my experience.
Yep.
However, I do see that Astorina starfish can get out of control to the point where they become unsightly. So I don't like to have them in there.
Yeah.
I'm testing a new hypothesis in that regard because I found out that Linkias actually eat Astorinas.
Really?
So,
good to know.
Yes. So they're all competing for the same stuff. So I've been collecting Linkias recently. I don't ever see Astorinas. It's really on a rare occasion that I see them. It's such a new tank, and I did such a great job in trying to eliminate them. But, I didn't want to dip my clams when I was adding them into my tank. So I think that they came in on those, like maybe stuck in a ridge or something like that. Anyways, Astorinas are in my tank, and I got to deal with them. I find that the harlequins, they can never really fully clear out an infection. So my goal is to, and I don't really like feeding harlequins like large chocolate.
Yeah, I feel bad.
start, yeah, I feel bad too.
Mhm.
So what I end up, what my main goal with the Linkias is to actually try to control the population that way.
Okay, that's a cool way to do it. I've never heard of the meeting yet, so that's awesome if they do. I've
Yeah,
had,
I've seen a couple people posting pictures of Linkia starfish eating Astarinas, like proving it.
yeah, that's
Yes.
super cool. I always found it kind of funny how they know if they're being hunted. Like, 'cause I've had the harlequins in the past, and also you'll see a lot of streamers like at the very top of the glass, like hiding away from them.
I've seen that too. That's so weird, huh? I totally forgot about that. That is totally true.
It's like
Yeah,
they know.
I totally forgot about that because I only kept harlequins twice, and then I didn't want to do what I had to do to keep them alive. So basically, yeah, they passed away. Sometime I had them like for 3 years, but yeah.
Yeah, no, they're super cool. It's too bad you couldn't feed them normal food as well. But
Yeah. Oh, can they?
no, you can't. They only eat
Oh,
starfish.
Right.
It's like
They
bird,
have
yeah,
to
only
starve it.
adaptasia. They're
Right.
very specific diet. But yeah,
Cool.
so I've never had an issue with them eating coral or zoas or anything. So I personally don't find that's an issue. There might be some oddball species variation out there that does, but I've
Right.
never personally seen it or anything was saying seen it happen.
Agreed. And then here's a perfect example of us just going hang-wire, not even discussing.
Oh, so if you overfeed and have crazy amounts of food, then the Astrina's population explodes.
I think that
Type in.
that's true. I think that that's true. I used to just leave them in, like, you were talking about my other systems. I don't know if it was on the live or not, but I had like 6 other tanks, like all plumbed into one sump at one point, and there were too many in there. Like, you still wouldn't notice them. But like when I came and moved to my new house, I was just like, I don't want to have that problem again. So
Yeah.
now when I see them, I just poke them out. It's not
Yeah.
a big deal.
It's easy.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. So feeding your corals, important, obviously, in your view.
Yes.
Yes. Now, from what I recall, you keep fairly high nutrients in your tank.
I do.
Now, you also do high par. So in general, if you do high par, you need high nutrients and high flow, which I'm assuming, are going for all 3 there.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So what do you keep your nutrients at? So I know so many people try and shoot for ultra low nutrients. And as I recall, yours are pretty dang high. So do you know what yours are roughly?
Yes, I do. So I measured them. I usually try to measure them like at least once a month. But nitrates are such an annoying test to do, honestly. So I don't really measure those every month.
Don't blame me.
But just based off of what I find every single time, because I keep a certain regimen of like how I do it, and we can go over that as well.
Okay.
Basically, my phosphates are usually anywhere between like 0.4 to 0.6, not 0.04 to 0.06. It's 0.4 to 0.6. So I do have certain times when my Hanna Ultra Low checker, which is the phosphate checker that I use, will be blinking 200 because I do the parts per billion.
Yeah.
And at that point, I like to know what they are, so I like to drop it down a little bit. And I'll do that by just skimming a little extra. I'll throw filter socks in there because I usually don't run filter socks. I think they're annoying. And what else do I do? I'll even tune up. Sorry, I'm getting a call here. 1 second. Let me deny this. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Sorry, we're on my cell phone here. I know you're on a fancy computer over there.
No problem.
So what I'll do to kind of drop my phosphates down, which I really do not like GFO. People who are watching this that are using GFO, please take that stuff out. It's really bad for your corals, and not just like a certain number or type of corals. It's bad for all of them. So if you can find different ways to moderate your nutrients, which are phosphate and nitrate from other modalities, from natural ones, I think that's much better.
Okay, question.
Yes.
Why do you think GFO is bad? Okay, bottoming out your PO4, terrible for corals. But in general, why do you think it's bad?
For GFO in particular, I think that it's the actual stuff that it's made of. So it's made like ferric oxide.
Yeah.
And ferric oxide, I think that you're going to get, I don't know if this will show up on ICP. I've never done this test. There might be some people that are like super particular about ICP and iron and all of that. But ferric is a charged form of iron. So ferric, whatever. So So ferric oxide, if it degrades, can increase your iron. I've seen iron crash tanks like in my area because there's some people on well water out in the suburbs, and I've seen people in that situation have really hard issues. Now, if you want to still run your GFO, instead of putting carbon after that chamber, what I would do is, number one, I would run it really, really low because you really don't want that stuff to be grinding.
Yep.
Number two, I would put Coopersorb in the second chamber and not carbon.
Okay.
Because suck out all that iron.
So I use it, so I was curious of your review on it.
Okay.
But
so do you have gonies?
I do, and they're happy. They're fine. Zero issues there. But I'm using Rollfoss. Like, I know it's basically GFO. There's a bit different. But I also don't tumble it. I sandwich it between sponges, so it's like a block.
That could be definitely a big contributing factor to your success with GFO, because I've run GFO in the past. And what I did at the outlet of my reactor, the tube that comes out, I put it into a filter sock, and that thing would turn red, brownish red.
Yeah.
So I know that when I had issues with gonies. I still have occasional issues with a particular goni, like glitter gonies are pretty hard for me. But when I took GFO out,
they're happy again?
They went nuts. Yeah, I mean, that was the only thing that I changed. A friend of mine that wasn't running it ended up making that recommendation to me, and it was night and day. And that was the only thing that at that time. I think that they're a little pesky towards certain acroporas too.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
My red planet's dying off as the tentacles are like brushing against the edge of it. So
yeah, so like if it's hurting an SPS, we can kind of surmise that if built up and run not how you run it, but how most people run it, by tumbling it so it doesn't clump. Would be probably detrimental to corals, but I don't want to, you are an OG reefer, so I don't want to press too hard.
There is a million ways to do the same thing, and 100%. So I love hearing all the different approaches to everything. So I think it's awesome. That's one of the cool things about this hobby.
And that's kind of before we get into like how I feed and what I think is important in regards to nutrients and the ratio of nutrients, which is what I really think that is important, and not really the number. Is that how you remove them? Because if you want to feed your corals nutrition, like nutrition and nutrients, they're two separate things, right? Yep. Nutrition is like what you're feeding the corals, like fatty acids, fat, chunky, meaty foods, like powder foods, zooplankton, phytoplankton. That's nutrition. Yep. Okay. Nutrients is what's broken down and how we indirectly measure the amount of nutrition that we're giving our corals, if that makes sense. So we can't really measure phytoplankton, right? I mean, you would have to have like a laser and some fucking crazy
microscope samples. Yes.
We'd have some like crazy device where you'd like be shooting through and actually like, counting it and then doing some math to figure out how much phytoplankton is in there. Nutrients are really just the breakdown products at the end of the life of whatever you're feeding, that's been broken down to a point where you can measure that with a chemistry device, set. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a few people asking GFO questions in the chat. One of the reasons mainly that I do it is because my whole red fuel ratio is out of whack. My phosphates, my nitrates are really low, and my phosphates are higher. So I'm trying to like rebalance things. That's part of one of my.
I appreciate this point, and I think that if your nitrates are low, the more common problem that I'm seeing when people are texting me and they're like, I can't get my nitrates up, and I get this question. I cannot tell you how many times I get this question. The first question that I ask them is, do you have any biobricks? Do you have any man-made biological material? Do you have any marine pure? Do you have any of those spheres? Do you have the bricks? Do you have too much rock? Do you have a deep sand bed? Because in the presence of an anoxic environment, when there's no oxygen present, the nitrifying bacteria will take it one step further and literally start eliminating nitrate from the water column and then leaving phosphate behind. Something that I've also, so I got 4 dogs over here, so if you guys hear any weird noises, it's that.
They're pretty quiet. They're good.
Here's just for everybody. This is my girl, okay? So that's her.
She's cute.
Thank you. I have 3 Frenchies and 1 American Bully. So anyways, if given the opportunity, the nitrifying bacteria will actually take that nitrate, which is left at the end of the process that we have ammonia, nitrite, and then nitrate. That will actually take nitrate and turn it into N2 gas, and that'll actually be the bubbles that you're like seeing bubbling up from. That'll be most of the bubbles.
Yeah.
Anyways, so if you have low nitrates in your tank, and you're trying to bring down your phosphate by using things like GFO or lanthanum chloride or whatever, you should look in other ways to bring your nitrates back up, and that would be eliminating marine pure. Number one. The problem that I see too often these days is people want like an amazing, beautiful scape. Yep. So what they do is they hire someone to make them a scape that looks amazing and is very functional with like little discs and whatever, and then they'll put that in the display, and then they're like, oh no, I need biologic because this isn't really a great biological filter. So what they'll do is then they'll pick up a marine pure, and it's like, yes,
tons of surface area.
This is the stuff. This is how I succeed. But then I don't want to bash this company because I think that they're great for like a fish-only system with very minimal lighting. But in my opinion, they eliminate too much nitrate. They leave the phosphate behind. What that results in is an inverted Redfield ratio. And what that results in is something called, cyanobacteria, dinoflagellates, like all of these ugly, slimy bacterial blooms and whatever that cover your rocks and cause issues and are actually toxic to corals. They're even toxic to dogs. For example, Lake Okeechobee.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk about Redfield ratio, and I'm kind of like, whatever. Whenever I talk about Redfield ratio, I like to bring up Lake Okeechobee. This is a man-made lake in Florida, and this is a large phosphate treatment facility in Florida. And in the southern tip of Florida, you have a lot of sugarcane factories that are plantations there that have a ton of runoff into their tributaries. Those all combine, form a river, and then they end up in Lake Okeechobee. The goal there is to take all that water, treat it, and then release it out into the ocean from freshwater to like an outlet into the ocean. Sometimes Lake Okeechobee gets hit with a big rainstorm, hurricane or whatever. Yeah. Tons of water is dumped in there at once. They can't treat it fast enough. And then what they end up doing is they just open up that valve and they let all this untreated phosphate-rich water into the ocean. Oof. And what that creates is a situation in which, in that little environment where all that water is flooding out, you have an inverted Redfield ratio, and that creates red tide. Red tide is actually cyanobacteria. And so if you have your dog on the beach, you throw a ball into the ocean, he catches a gulp of water, he'll come back out a few hours later, he'll be dead.
Really?
That's actually the same reason you see a bunch of beached dolphins. It's not always the reason why. Yeah. But when you see beached dolphins, a bunch of dead fish that all just pop up at once, not only does cyanobacteria have little cytotoxins inside of its cell wall, but it also deprives all of the water of oxygen itself. Yeah. So.
I had no idea it was that dangerous to have like animals and stuff as well. That's crazy.
It is very dangerous. It is very toxic material. So if that's the case, you got to think, if it can kill my dog, well, what about my baby coral?
Yeah, no kidding. Nasty. Yeah. So okay.
Number one. Sorry, you want something?
No, go for it. Go for it.
Number one, if you're having problems with nitrate and too high of phosphate, first thing that I want to say is remove some biologic. If you have a deep sand bed, get that out. If you have the marine pure, get that out. If you have too much Marco rock, that stuff can do it as well. But a secondary cause is that you're not feeding good products. So that can kind of segue into the products that I like to feed, or
Well, okay, first of all, removing biomeat is actually a super simple way to do it. I don't know why the heck I didn't think of that. So awesome point. Uh, now, just a quick thing, circle back. A couple people are asking, what is the Redfield ratio? I think it's like 106 to 16, or basically 1 to 10 is like to roughly is your nitrate to phosphate. So,
yeah. So this can get a little confusing, but I like to just simplify it like this, okay? There's not a ton of literature out there. The literature that is written is kind of confusing. So what I have found is that it's really like 1 to 100.
yep.
So basically, let's take my tank, for example, which I think that it's perfect.
You're like, oh, my nitrate is about 100. Okay.
So let's say my phosphates are 0.4.
Okay.
Not 0.04, they're 0.4. That means my nitrates need to be 40.
Mm-hmm.
If my phosphates are 0.6, that means my nitrates need to be 60. Okay? If my phosphates are 0.1, then my nitrates need to be 10. Now, where does coral grow the best? There's no question that coral grows the best it grows the fastest in a low nutrient environment, especially SPS. Now, if you were listening to what I said already before, SPS are very sensitive, and if they don't have a thick, I can't. If SPS are really, they're not fed well, they have a very thin layer of skin.
Mm-hmm.
And they're very sensitive to alkalinity swings and temperature swings and salinity swings. So what I like to do is keep it fat, but you really can't really do that in a low nutrient environment. But there's no question that they grow fastest. I think that I would be comfortable saying where like a 0.1 phosphate and a 10 nitrate. If you can keep it there, you could still get pretty good colors, but also get really, really fast growth. For me, where I don't have like a ton of time to like just keep a constant eye on alkalinity. I haven't tried it and all of that. I keep my temperature super duper tight, 75.5 to 76.5. That's my swing.
Yep.
And I keep my salinity really tight by having a really nicely tuned apex conductivity probe. And I know people will go all over the place with that. If you calibrate it correct, and if you have the SPS kit
with the little water flow going over to keep the bubbles off.
That's revolutionary.
Yep.
I'm flatline, baby. Okay. So if you keep it like that, then you really have no problems. You're not removing water. I mean, where's the salt going to go? It's going to stay in, you know? So, pickles. She just loves to chew. Yeah. What is the Redfield ratio? Why is it important? Okay, so the Redfield ratio is really important because bacteria, both bad and good, thrive in an inverted Redfield ratio environment. So if you have this bad bacteria, the bacteria that can cause brown jelly disease, these scenarios really get out of hand when your Redfield ratio is inverted. So if you have like 5 nitrates and your phosphates are like 0.5, or if you have 0 nitrates, they're undetectable. They're still there, but if they're undetectable and your phosphates like 0.5 or like 0.1 even, you're gonna have increased rates of your euphilia brown jellying out of nowhere. Yeah. Now, there are a million different ways in which we can utilize the technology that we have now to keep those issues at bay. So one of mine is I have a really big 110 UV sterilizer through which I pump 1,600 gallons per hour. Everyone's rate going through that is going to change depending on the size of the system and depending on what you're trying to kill. Are you trying to kill parasites that you can see, which are small, or which are large, or are you trying to kill bacteria, which you can't see? You can see ick, but you cannot see bacteria. The larger the organism gets, the slower that they replicate. Just like elephants reproduce really slowly, their gestational period is very long. They reproduce slower. Where with bunnies and rats or mice or whatever, they reproduce like every week, right?
Yeah.
So that means you have to have a fast rate going through your UV sterilizer to be controlling for algae spores and bacterial cells. Okay? And then the other way to do it is through the use of medications like Cipro. And another way to do it is to make sure that your red field ratio is correct. Now, what is the red field ratio and how do they determine it? There were a lot of people that were taking samples of water through all the different places in the ocean, okay? And no matter where they took it, if they took it from the crystal clear waters of the Great Barrier Reef right at the top where the SPS are, they found that the ratio was the same as what's found is where the goniopora are found, down in the silty area.
Everywhere.
They found the ratio of nitrates to phosphates, although the numbers are different, is the exact same when you go down into the siltier areas. Now, if you take a coral, like a piece of SPS, and throw it in a blender, and then you try to, measure that decay, you're going to find that the bacteria in the coral have the same exact ratio, which is the red field ratio. So we are trying to optimize the environment for the zooxanthellae, not the Vibrio or the staph or the strep or the whatever's in the water. It's actually anaerobic, like bacteria like Clostridium and all these other different types of, not strep and staph, is whatever. Those other bacteria, the bad ones that I was just mentioning, those ones have a different red field ratio, inside of their organic makeup, than the bacteria inside of the SPS. Does that make sense?
It does, kind of. Okay, so now a lot of people will say that corals eat bacteria from the water column.
True.
Now, question on your tank: do you worry about that at all? You feed so heavily, so probably irrelevant because you have a massive UV on your tank.
Yep.
So there's probably not much in the water column, except what you add, to an extent.
There, you would think that, but I have a robust amphipod copepod population. Also, I can never remember what type of snail this is, but this type of snail, I think it's a trochus or maybe it's a Nisarius or whatever.
Yeah.
They're reproducing all the time, so they're
putting out the love juice into the tank.
So there's that, but also it's what I add. So it's what I add. I feed 3 times a week. If I find that my phosphates are blinking 200 on my Hannah, then I'll skip.
Yeah.
And I'll add some. I don't really add filter socks. I'll increase my the duration of my photo period for my sump, my refugium.
Yeah.
And then I'll also try to skim a little bit more wet with my Nios 300.
Okay, so you have a nice BC skimmer. Again, your tank's huge. So I have what do I have on my tank? The 200, I don't know, smaller version of yours. So you got that. So you got the BC skimmer, you got a big refugium. Do you do anything else to deal with nutrients, or that's it?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, now I have another question.
Now, also what I find with that
is
that marine plants remove the stuff at the same ratio, so they keep it in the same ratio because they also have the same red field ratio within inside of them. So if we let those plants decay and sorry,
no problem.
We let those plants decay and we measure the nutrients in that juice that it creates, it's going to be the same ratio.
Yeah. So, okay. So one caveat here, your nutrients are crazy high, but you also have a ton of coral. So
yes.
If you did not have a ton of coral and super high nutrients, that's probably a disaster for algae. But if you have a ton of acros, you have a ton of coral, they're going to use that as a food source and they're going to soak it up. And it's actually kind of a good thing to an extent for them. So just throwing that out there.
I agree with that a little bit, Devin,
Yeah.
but honestly, I feel like bad bacteria as well. Now, this is all hypothetical, like in my crazy head.
Yeah.
I have a rock inside of my tank that is really close to the surface, so none of my tangs can get up there,
And
it's getting blasted with light.
Yeah.
There is not a single piece of hair algae or any type of other algae that you might find up there. Like, it's just clean.
Yeah.
I think that those bad, with exception to the bubble algae, I think that those bad algae also thrive in an inverted ratio environment, but that's like totally just off the cuff there. I really have nothing to support that.
Yeah.
All I can say is that I don't have a speck of algae in my tank. It grows in my sump where I intentionally grow it, and I grow Caulerpa. Really grow I grow Chido too, but it's not as fast. It's not as vivacious. Since I'm adding so much nutrition to my tank, I like to pull it out just as quickly.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, a couple of people are asking about burnt tips, and what are your thoughts on them?
Well, burnt tips is from a fluctuation of alkalinity. Now, if you have healthy corals that are very well fed, they're not going to get burnt tips because I can fluctuate my alk, and it's not a problem.
Yeah. Now, what is your alk range?
My alk range is 8 point on the Trident.
Yeah.
With off by, considerable amounts.
As long as it's consistently off, that's all that matters.
It's really about that trend, right?
Yeah.
I don't like to go above an alk of 9.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's way too high. You're playing with fire up there, in my opinion. My doser, which doses my... sorry.
It's all good.
Do you want me
It's funny.
move?
No, it's all good, man.
Okay. My doser, which doses my calc stirrer,
Mm-hmm.
and another thing, that's another way to remove phosphate. Calc stirrer, calc wasser will go in and bind phosphate.
Yep. Okay, I have a question on this one. You somehow supplement your tank with just calc. And
Hold on, what were we talking about first?
I already lost it.
No, we were talking about
alkalinity and swing
alkalinity.
Stability, alk levels. Yeah.
Alk is driven by pH, okay? So if you have an Apex and you have a pH monitor and you have a Trident and you have an alkalinity graph, you can click on your alkalinity graph and you can overlap the pH with the graph, right? You can see that these things are connected. So alkalinity will also swing, and this drove me crazy. Alkalinity swings depending on the time of the day. Okay, this took me until I got the Trident to figure this out. Because what I would do, Devin, is like I would have time like at 2 p.m. Like, oh yeah, I gotta measure my alk. Haven't measured it. Measure it then. Then the next day I would measure it at 8 p.m. And I'd be like, oh shit, like my alk is not stable. And that would lead me to doing little micro adjustments to how I used to dose alkalinity and calcium, which was through a calcium reactor.
Yep.
And I would do little minuscule adjustments. So just know that if you're testing alkalinity by hand, test it at the same time of day every day.
Yep. Okay?
That will make you not go crazy with doing little micro adjustments to your doser, to your calcium reactor, however you're doing it. So what is my swing with my alkalinity? My swing is normally when things are going good, now that I don't have like 6 things all with different photo periods plumbing into one sump, my swing for alkalinity is normally 8.2 to 8.5.
Okay, nice. So when you had 6 different things plugged into one sump, just out of curiosity, did you offset the photo periods to try and keep your pH everything stable? Did it work well?
So I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this was like holy grail moment for me. When I had really tuned up my 6 tanks over. You should have seen my apartment. It was so crazy. I had PVC like lining up the walls. I drilled like huge holes into my because like I ran out of like electrical space like in the fridge,
Yeah.
like in wall sockets. So I started like pulling I started bringing electricity from outside. One of them was outside of my apartment. I cracked the window, put an electrical cord in there, and ran it all the way over to my reefing area, which was basically my whole apartment, let's be honest.
That's
And
awesome.
started like it was so crazy. Some people are watching this, they saw this. Like I had holes drilled into my closet so I could run like just huge, thick, like whatever. So
Addicted
anyway,
reefer status.
yes, totally, so bad. And I had just PVC pipes, like 6 PVC pipes, just like plastered up to my wall, all plumbed into the same Boshi sump.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I did was I had 6. I didn't have 6 tanks. I had 5 tanks. I had 1 sump though, so 6, whatever. So, one of my tanks ran from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. One of them ran from 10 p.m. to 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. The 180, which was the largest of the 5, ran from noon to midnight.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had 2 separate small frag tanks, which ran from midnight to noon.
That's
all
awesome.
all of those tanks were all mixing into the same sump.
Mm-hmm.
So it was at this time around this time, this was like 3 years ago, that I had discovered that pH was driving alkalinity. So I'm like, oh, I gotta control the pH.
Yep.
You know, like that's my new adventure.
Mm-hmm.
People who have the Trident, when they're doing tests, you're going to see that, like, you know, your test is like at 8.23 one time, 8.36 later, 8.39, and then like 8.4, and then back to 8.2, whatever. There was a period of time where, like, I had kind of manipulated the water to a certain point where, like, I was dosing alkalinity very strategically based off of the 180's photo period, because I said that the 180 in my head had all the SPS, had all the euthelia, and not only that, but it had the biggest volume of water. So in my head, it had the most gravity when it came to pH, sinusoidal swings. So I did everything that I could to kind of counteract that eventual pH swing. And I was able to get my swing down to 8.85 to 8.9.
Yeah.
That's a high pH. That's a whole another.
That's another question coming up.
8.85 to 8.9 was my swing. It was like flat. I mean, even when you look at it, the
chart makes it look like mountains, but it's like
it still makes it look really large, even though the scale has changed. It was it was flatline, bro.
Yeah.
Flatline. So I had it running like that for like 2-3 weeks. I swear to God, my Trident was like 8.42, 8.42, 8.42, 8.40, 8.42, 8.42. And I got chills down my spine because I started doing this. And I was like, I'm not going to share this information with anyone, because I swear to God, like, it was like, when I started looking at my corals, I was watching them grow at that point. Like my SPS corals, I'm like, that was like a little tiny little nub like the other day. Now it's footed out. Oh, now it's got little branch. And then like 3 days later, it's got like a branch that big on it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people ask me like, oh, should I be dosing all of, because I posted some stuff up on my Facebook page about, the importance of pH and how I'm manipulating it to make it not only high, but also to have it stable.
Yep.
Because then your alkalinity is stable.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of chasing alkalinity stability, we should really be chasing pH stability. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, should I be dosing all of my alkalinity in the reverse of my photo period for my main tank? And I do that to a certain extent, but what you find is that hours later, after you've thrown in a bunch of Kalkwasser, you're going to really start seeing your alkalinity kind of bump. And so even though the pH will be slightly more stable, you'll still see like what I've seen from my own. I'm not like charting this. Like I'm taking mental pictures in my head. Like what did my graph look like yesterday? What were the minutes like? In regards to how many minutes were my pump on to dose the calc slurry, the calc supernatant into my reef. And I found that doing it like that, although is beneficial and does make it more like I dose the majority of the kalkwasser at nighttime. That's true, but I don't dose all of it at nighttime. I still dose. I would say I dose probably 25% of my calc supernatant into my tank during the day, and the other 80% is opposite my 450 photo period.
Yeah. Okay. Now, two questions here. One, so your pH is crazy high, which I've always been curious. Is there a too high for pH? Like, what's the upper limit? And is there any negative effects being crazy high, or is it just all good?
So I never went above 8.9. I started texting Chris Meckley when I was up there. He's like, bro, that's way too high. I'm like, no, it's roaring over here. And it was. I'd never seen any growth like how I had it back at that place. Now my pH swing while I'm here in my new place, I don't have all those tanks, and I can't like step up my pH by the manipulation of those photo periods, because when I had all those tanks, my pH never dropped. So I could like utilize kalkwasser and like manipulation of photo periods with those other tanks to make sure that my pH like never got below like 8.7.
Yeah.
I was telling Chris Meckley that, and he's kind of a guy that I like to listen to over at ACI Aquaculture. I think that him and Richard over at Aficionado, they always put out great content. I follow along with him a lot. He was like, bro, don't go above 8.4. I'm like, I'm going. And I love being up there. And right now my pH is at 8.5, 8.7, 0 issues. And not only that, but in an acidic environment, bacterial blooms. Bacteria thrive in acidity.
Yeah. So probably less issues all around with higher pH.
Absolutely.
Yep. That's crazy. Okay. Now, your tank is massive, which means you have to dose a lot of calc, which makes me wonder how you can supplement everything with just calc. How do you evaporate so much that you can actually do it with calc? Because I always find, in a packed tank, usually there's that point where you can't dose anymore, or else your water level is going to keep rising over time.
So some people that are watching may not actually understand that point, so I'll just take 1 second to let them know that. I use a calc stir, the K2 Avis Marine from Avis Marine, whatever. The K2 calc stir, and then what that does is it's like roadie water mixed with a slurry on the bottom of kalkwasser, which is just calcium hydroxide. And you'll notice that doesn't contain alkalinity. So where does the alkalinity come from? So there's a slurry at the bottom, and there's a prop that's constantly spinning it. And then at the top, there's a little hose. And what you do is you pump the water in, it goes through a little straw all the way down, mixes with the calc slurry, it rises, and then it overflows into this tank very simply. Now, what Devin just mentioned is that the issue with that is that you're limited by the amount of evaporation you have. Because the more and more you add, because like your calcilinity, your alkalinity, the consumption is exponential. 2 turns to 4, 4 turns to 8, 8 turns to 16, 16 to 32, 32 to 64, all the way up. So as your reef starts to grow, your alkalinity and your calcium demands start to grow as well, and that's an exponential rise. Yep. So how do I keep up with all of that? Exactly. I haven't reached the limit, but basically, like, I've added fans. It's like 10 degrees outside right now, and I'm blowing fans on my reef, and my heaters are on, and I do that because I'm increasing the evaporation rate, and that's also helping with my pH. So that's one way. Yeah. I think that's the only way, Devin, to really safely
just increase
blowing fans. Yeah.
I just pulled up one of your Instagram photos. You can see the two big fans on the back wall.
Yeah, there's that one, but actually the largest, those are actually blowing at my lights.
Yeah.
The large ones are in my canopy.
Oh, blowing down?
Yeah, on the surface water.
Ah.
Sedimentation will help with evaporation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And the more kalkwasser you can dose, honestly, is the better. And this is why OG reefers who have been doing this for years, they swear by kalkwasser.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cheap.
Yeah.
I have a 4-pound bag of pharmaceutical. I don't like using this word anymore.
What brand do you use? What's your go-to?
Valkyrie Supply, but I'm thinking about into ESV.
Yeah, nice.
Yep. So I use the pharmaceutical grade. Get me started. Kalkwasser on my tank. And I push about 5.5 gallons through that calc slurry every single day.
It's a good chunk.
So that's a good chunk.
Yeah.
So I use I have to refill my calc stir pretty consistently. Like every 3 days, I put about 150 milliliters of calc powder to it.
Okay, so a good chunk. Okay, 150 milliliters. What's that, like a quarter cup, a cup?
I don't know how to.
Grams. Okay.
Like it's how I use. I don't.
Okay, you top it off all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fair. I'll go with it. Now, when you were calling it like a slurry or calc plus, do you consider what you get out of the Avast more of that slurry zone? Because it's still clearer in that one, but
this is also a question that I get constantly. Not constantly. I say probably like 3 times a week from 3 separate people.
Yeah.
Do I dose calc slurry or should I just dose like the water that's like on top or whatever? In my opinion, never dose calc slurry. The reason why Avis Marine has instructions to completely empty out your Avis Marine K2 calc stirrer, clean it out, put vinegar in it, wash it down, put it back, refill it, put the calc back in there. And that's because everything we buy, no matter how pharmaceutical grade it is going to have impurities, and that's not that doesn't exclude kalkwasser. So that's why I don't recommend to dose calc slurry. That's one reason, because you're going to be dosing in those impurities into your tank. Where if you're just using the Avis Marine, this is why I love Avis Marine so much, because they are the only ones besides Deltec that has the constantly spinning prop. Okay, that means that 2-inch area that's constantly overflowing or like overflowing based off of your dosing schedule is always the exact same super saturated supernatant that goes into your thing. Yes, it is mildly clear, but it has a pH of 11.4.
Do you use a probe to monitor your calc?
I do measure mine, but I find that it builds up so much on the probe that you really don't get like your pH is below 11.4. You need to add some more. Yeah, add some more, because I've gone down to like 11.1 and like clear. And like 0.1, like that's not a lot of a difference. So like I don't really rely on that. I actually rely on my visual. Have about 2.5 inches of calc slurry on the base there. Okay. Now, why else do you want to dose calc slurry? Because it messes with your pumps. Mess up.
Now, how often? A couple of people are asking, how often do you clean out your calc reactor?
So, I had the OGs over. Shout out to Cherry Corals, my boys. Todd Cherry and Brett Harris, and Brett was giving me shit because he's like, listen, man, you got to clean this out. He's like, he does it, and Brett is very particular. Brett's on the moonshine, those guys are particular, and I don't want to give up too much of their info over there, but they're an ultra low. At least Todd's in charge of like the ZOAs and the LPS, and Brett is in charge of the SPS. So Todd is if you met Todd, is very laid back and chill, and Brett is more particular. So Brett has all the Jimmy Magoo's and the gadgets and all of the stuff and all of the little, let me measure my potassium and boron and all of that and ICP. And Todd is very hands off.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool. Like, everyone's different, and this hobby's made for everybody.
Yeah.
And that's why I love it. It can encompass like the person that wants to be hands off and the person that wants to be hands on. So what was the question?
How often you clean your calculator?
Oh yeah. Once every 3 months.
Every 3 months? Okay. They're also asking how often or after how long you find it loses potency, you got to top it off. But if you're adding it every 3 days, you never see that.
That totally depends on the amount that you're dosing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's going to depend. So I do it by the visual. Okay. I like to have 2 inches, like this much. If that's 2 inches, like that's like 1.5 quarters
Mm-hmm.
or what of slurry on the bottom of my. I'm not talking about ice cap. I can't. I don't use it.
Yep.
And you have to time it.
Mm-hmm.
And Connor, I know I love you, man. If you're watching this show, I don't want to hate on your reactor, but like, because he's supposed to be watching. But shout out to Connor Sloan over to Coral View. They're a great company as well for dry goods and all of that. They only sell the ice cap. I don't think they sell the Avis Marine.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to, hate on the ice cap. But I it's not consistent at the top because the ice cap is on a magnetic stirrer.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the truth, then that area up top is not always super saturated and super consistent, which means that you're not getting the most out of your calc reactor as you could, as if you use a prop.
Okay. I've had them both, so yeah, it's funny. Okay. Now, actually, randomly, I don't know who mentioned this the other day, but I might try it. But in their Avast, they put a bunch of like zip ties off the side of it to like add a little more little paddly mixy things. I might actually try that on mine, see if I notice any differences.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, just to add like more little mixers to more agitate the column.
That's a good idea. I
don't know if it makes a big difference, but
I can't find anything wrong with that. I don't see why that would be a bad thing.
Yeah.
Other than to the point where you're adding so many that you're getting to the calc slurry range, I would be fine with that.
Yep. Okay. So now for actually feeding your tank, what do you actually feed your corals first of all?
You want to come in? Let's go in.
Let's see. Let's give us
I have it
the
all
tour.
lined up for everyone to see because
Perfect.
I know if I don't, I feed a lot of products. So let's just go in. So this is my drop down tank. Let me just rearrange this thing here.
Ooh, I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, this is all my these are actually my favorite corals.
Nice.
Yeah, these are my fave.
Those are pretty.
And I mean, it's like between the Acanthophilia and the Scolemia. I love them. Like, look at them. They're so juicy, and I just love to watch them eat. I just love it when they just contort their bodies. Like, I remember when I first got into this hobby, I was obsessed with Acanthophilia, and I couldn't keep them alive, and I didn't know why. And it's because I kept stuffing silver sides like into their mouth because I wanted to watch them eat so bad. But then, like after that, shrimp would come out at night, and then they would destroy the coral trying to get it out.
I thought it was from overfeeding, but okay, so.
This is the 150.
Yep, beautiful.
Okay, these are my gonies.
Oh, I love it.
These are all the products that I feed here, okay? I'm lining up for everybody,
yep.
Okay? So I have my supplementation over to the left. Let's just disregard that for now.
Mm-hmm.
I have my nutrition over to the right, okay?
Yep.
I consider these things kind of be one and the same. I actually mix them all in the same jug.
Special blend.
Like Mary Poppins said, a little bit of sugar helps the medicine go down, right?
Yep.
So, so that'll help you your corals uptake, your stuff. Okay. So the backbone of my blend is this Benepet.
Mm-hmm.
And why? Why?
Do tell.
Because it's got a great red field ratio. This has a lot of nitrates in it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to hate on any companies, okay? except maybe one. But Benepets is great because it has all marine-based protein in it. Now, I don't know if this is true, but I know for certain, based off of my tests, that if you're using Reefroids, you're going to have a lot of phosphates, and you're not going to have the right ratio, and you're going to have an inverted whatever. So then you're going to have cyano problems and whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
So I like to use this. We'll go with the powder food first, and then I started using this based off of a recommendation from.
Oh, that's good stuff. Yeah.
Yep, this is great stuff. I don't use the larger pellets. I don't know. I like the powder. I don't go any larger than the powder. And then I started using this. This is Aquaforest Power Food.
Mm-hmm.
See if I can show that. Okay, that's also powder. Looks very similar to Reefroids.
Yep.
And then I use a whole line of Brightwell products.
So you got zooplankton. I haven't actually used any of those Brightwell products, which is ironic because I feed a bunch of their other foods. So
I have to say that SPS, they love this stuff. I don't know what it is. I just freaking,
yeah, try that one. Zooplanktons.
love this.
So
that can go to show I don't measure anything. Okay.
Yeah.
So the Brightwell products are great because they have M, S, S, and S. I buy all the S's and the M's only because my L comes from the powder food that I let defrost for sit in the gunk for 15 minutes just to let it marinate.
Okay, so what is the M and S for?
The M and S is for medium, small, and then the L is
size. Okay.
That one for large. Okay,
Yep.
so that's going to depend on the size of the coral's mouth. Okay.
Yep.
Another product that I'm trying out, but I might ditch it, is this AF. What is this called? Energy. It's basically like whatever aminos. I'm probably ditching that. And then this is HW Biotip. This is the HW amino acid mixture.
Yep.
And then I go over to my supplementation here. Now, how do I do that? There's a million ways to do this. Like I said, a million ways to skin the cat. There's the Reef Moonshiner's way because I don't do water changes on this tank unless I'm going to a show. So the way to do it my way is basically buy a salt that you like, okay? I'm not going to make a salt brand recommendation, number one. So if people are asking that question, I cannot do that.
All right.
The way that I do it is I fill my corals into the tank, and then what I do is I let them grow for 3 months or so, and then I start sending out ICPs, okay?
Yeah.
And then I see what I'm low in. And then I like the Triton ICP better than the ATI, unless you're doing it at first, because the ATI will test your Rhodie as well, okay? Yeah. So I like to send out an ATI preliminarily because, I like to see that my Rhodie is nice and clean if I'm moving into a new place or whatever. And then I follow those up with Tritons because Triton is so easy to understand. Now, when I send out my ICP, it's always low in the same stuff, okay? And I underdose this stuff. Always start by underdosing. If we're talking about if we're talking about atoms, base elements, underdose them. Do not go based off of the recommendations. If they say 2 milliliters of this a day, dose a mil. Okay. So I'll send out an ICP test, and they'll always come back a little low in iron, maybe a little low in manganese, always low in vanadium. Yeah. And then I'll also dose the manganese there. So and then barium and strontium. I ran out of strontium, so that is not in this picture. But from left to right, I have the Pax Bellum, which I'm not going to buy anymore. I'm gonna stick directly for this one because I'm going to stick with the Triton because based off of the Triton ICP, they actually tell you the exact amount of stuff that you should be dosing. So I'm going to stick with that. Yeah. I have the iron manganese combo, barium, and then Pulse Extra, which is really just from Coral and Zoops. Kind of should actually be over in the nutrition area. And then the vanadium and then manganese. And I have to say, guys, Goniophora, they love manganese.
They
And
looking
then
good. Okay, now how important do you think trace elements are? Do you notice a big difference when tweaking your trace elements versus ignoring them?
I think that is like that question is like way out the door in regards to the jury is back and they're
Yeah.
very important. If you have been on Andre Mueller's Reef Moonshiner page and how much success all these people are having in regards to his regimen and what he does.
I was doing it actually, so yeah, I know I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great regimen. I'm just not that guy.
Hmm.
I'm the guy that's gonna basically be like, I gotta dose like 2 milliliters of like iodine. I just can't do that. So what I do is like I send out ICPs, yes, and I just and then sorry, primarily what I do is I have a doser over here. This doser, the Jabo,
Yeah.
this is dosing the HW 2-part trace tip. So there's a trace tip 2-part from HW, which I use. And those two, that's a 2-part regimen that is dosing the micro elements into your tank.
Hmm.
And that's my main, this is my flow when it turns on.
So what all do you use for flow in the tank? Because I'm imagining you probably have pretty high flow.
I use
higher.
both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got a good chunk of pumps.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And they're all plugged into their own Apex outlet.
Hmm.
They all have their own outlet, and they're all running their own program.
Okay.
So sometimes I have 9 on, 3 off, or like 11 on, 0 off, all of them off, and none on. And I call those lagoon periods.
Hmm.
And I would highly recommend that because that's when the corals really like to come out.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's always a different combination of pumps that are on.
Okay, quick question that came up in the chat a while ago. I forget about it. What flow rate were you running through your UV since you have those 2 big beastie units on it?
Yeah, so these are each 55 watt units here, and it's just one unit. So it's just 55 watt, whatever. It's like a 3 or 4 foot long UV sterilizer.
Yep.
The flow that I put through here is 1,600 gallons per hour. No. I'm sorry. It's 1,900.
Okay. So a good chunk, but they got a lot of contact time going through both tubes as well.
Yes, but also you want a fast rate to control for algae spores and bacteria, and you want a slow rate to control for fish disease.
Yeah. Okay, I also see a CO2 scrubbing media hanging off the side going to your skimmer. What else am I noticing on the wall here? Out of curiosity, how long does that last you going through the big NAS skimmer?
So I started recirculating my my air like 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what I have here is I have the top of my skimmer. It drilled it. This is a Nios 300 with 2 pumps pulling massive amount of air.
Yeah.
And that's going to here. And I've been doing this forever, just so you guys know. This is my what I call humidity collection chamber.
Mm-hmm.
And it traps all that humid air coming from the top of the skimmer in here. Then it goes through here, and then it goes into here. And that is my CO2 absorbent media. And then it goes back, it splits, goes into the air silencer and down to the Venturi.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how long does this last me? This lasts me about a month.
Okay. That's not too bad, actually.
Other one here, Devin, I bet you don't do this. This is another CO2 absorbent canister.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hooked up to a Tom's Aqualifter. Pulls water, which pulls air in through here to the Tom's Aqualifter and pushes it through an air stone.
Yeah.
So at nighttime, I'm injecting pure O2 into my Abyss A400.
Mm-hmm.
And then that does bubble scrubbing into my tank at nighttime.
Nice. I used to do that. It's been ages.
I
Not a bad
know
idea, actually.
thing, honestly, I think that it helps with water clarity.
It
Because
100% does.
It basically turns your entire tank into a skimmer.
Yep.
And if you run a dirty thing where you're constantly throwing this crap in here, you really want to scrub the water and scrub the rocks, and those bubbles, they just get everywhere.
Yeah. No, that's a good way to do it. It's actually a good idea, sucking it through more media to make it extra pure.
Extra pure O2, so that we're bumping the pH
Any chance you get.
opposite. All about pH at the opposite of this photo period.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Okay, now that's another question. You have a lot of lights up there.
I have not only those lights, but I have.
Oh, that's your big fan.
I have cannons. Oh,
yeah.
Hold on a second.
Okay.
I gotta reset this thing.
All right.
It gets too heavy.
Oh,
Okay,
the gimbal. Yeah.
Yeah, the gimbal. Okay, yeah, I have these. These are awesome. These are Amazonas, and I have these like all over. Oh, sorry. They're actually 4 foot off the surface of the water, and these are great lights. I love these things. They're so powerful. That they're amazing, and they added a lot of extra par.
It's crazy you're using those on top of all the other stuff you have on there. Like, that's a lot of light.
Yeah, it is a lot of light. So the par value for my SPS is usually, depending on the piece, like if it's super high up on the water column, like up here, it's like 900.
Yeah.
And like down here where this one is like, like 600. And then some of my Euphilia, they're getting blasted too. But I have like this frosted tip here, this frosted Euro brace.
Yeah.
And so they're getting kind of like a more of an indirect light, at least some of them. Because some Euphilia can really kind of stand the high.
That's actually quite a bit of par for Euphilia, and they all seem happy, so that's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, so this is through and through a mixed reef, definitely heavy on the SPS, which you have literally everything from Euphilia, acros, gonies. So you pretty much have everything in there. Now your drop-off tank, that has a lot of your more meaty stuff.
Yep, this has
Nice.
my Blastos, all my Acanthophilia, my Cinerinas that I'm now aquaculturing. My Acanthastrias or Micromusas, which
Nice.
are now called the Acan Lords, all of those. And then, Elegance. And, I've had this guy forever. That's my Dendro.
Nice.
I've had him since 2012. They grow so slow, man.
Yeah.
I've never fragged this guy.
I had one head, and it started to die off. This is like ages ago, and I started feeding it, and it came back, and I'm up to 2 heads. So I'm slowly trying to get them to grow. But yeah, they're super slow growers, but they're cool though.
And these are my aquacultured Cinerinas.
Nice.
That's 4 of them.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thanks.
So many nice curls. Love it. Okay, question. Do you run carbon or anything like that in your tank?
I do run carbon, not often.
Okay.
I have carbon on the tank right now.
Do you worry at all about potential coral warfare from Euphilias and acros and everything together?
No, not Euphilia macros.
More softies, I guess, but...
About that Euphilia to Euphilia. But no, honestly, for me, SPS are the easiest ones.
Yeah.
Because they are the only ones with rules. Everything else doesn't have a rule. Like with like mushrooms or zoas, especially zoas. I mean, if we're talking zoas, like some zoas can really tolerate high light.
Yep.
Some of them can't. Where with SPS, they all like high light, unless you're talking about like a granulosa or like that's pretty much the only one. Doesn't like high light.
How does he light the lights? What? I don't understand that question. Yeah, so a couple people ask. Okay, so Rich was asking, what do you think about Chris's kelp method? So basically, he doses all of his kelp water at nighttime, reverse photo period, essentially what you'd evaporate in a day. So you're doing about 70% that, and then the other 25%, 30% in the daytime, right?
We're talking about Chris Mack, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Chris, he can kind of do whatever he wants.
He has so much
He's
volume.
got, yeah, he's got 10,000 gallons. So, in regards to actual coral density to water volume
Hmm.
ratio, if we're talking about that, our tanks, like a normal person's tank, I mean, this is a normal person, but like a normal tank is going to have more coral density to water volume.
Hmm.
So honestly, Chris can do, you know, I mean, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but that doesn't make him less talented. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Chris can throw potassium hydroxide in his tank and like not really have to worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is true. Okay, a couple people asking what par levels do you run in your ACAN tank?
I haven't tested them, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fair. What are you
Um,
running for lights?
this one is just one small compact,
Hmm.
and it's 2 feet off the water line. Oh, jeez, this thing sucks. It's 2 feet off the water line, and it's also running a less intense schedule than in there.
Okay.
I find that these guys, like the Acanthophilia and Acans, really like to have a lower light.
Hmm.
They just poof up more, you know?
Yeah, that's fair. Super cool. I love the drop off tank. That's a new one I haven't seen before. Looks awesome.
Thank you.
So what's your favorite type of coral? Like, do you have any like favorites that whenever you go to your tank, you're like, yeah, you're my guy?
I don't know. Maybe this master.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love him.
He's pretty.
He's so big. He's like 5 inches or something. He's huge. This is a 70-gallon tank,
Hmm.
but this guy's awesome. And actually, they're supposed to be in bed right now. It's past their bedtime. This is this. So I'm doing it again, okay? Because I'm crazy. But this is 8 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Yep.
And then this is noon to midnight.
Nice.
And they're plumbed into the same. Basically, I have my Abyss A400 running this, the left side of the tank, and this tank right here. And
Nice.
it just comes off here, and then here are the overflows for that tank.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good way to do it. Okay, so as for your filtration system, you got the big skimmer, you run Clerpa in the sump. You got anything else that you really run in your sump or filtration wise?
That's it.
That's it. Nice and simple.
Yep, nice and looks really simple, but yeah, I don't run filter socks unless I really am trying to drop my phosphates because I'm worried about how high they might be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, Rurik, if the ACAN color gets morphed from too much light, can you bring it back down by lowering lights?
Like bring the color back.
I find mainly ACAN's color are better from feeding. I don't know if I've noticed a huge difference in lights. I don't know. How about you?
I've seen a lot of acans taken from the ocean that come in looking like a rainbow unicorn poop, just turn into just all red.
Yep.
That's why, like I say, like they're usually done coloring, I would say like a year after.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not you can bring the color back, once it's been in captivity, if it's gone all red, usually that's how it stays. At least that's how I've appreciated it. I don't really notice that they change color based off of, like, if you're gonna put them in like super high par, yeah, it's gonna go red faster.
Yeah.
Or it might get like more red. But yeah, I've seen that they do change colors, but to manipulate the lights, I'm not sure about that.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, I've honestly, I find with acans or micros, if you feed them fairly heavy, you get way better coloration. Or if you don't feed them, they tend to be more bland. That's been my experience with them over the years.
Yeah,
They really
Well,
appreciate food.
I eat them, so maybe that's why mine are so rainbowy. I have pretty good luck with picking them too.
Yeah, nice. Someone was asking, are you using the default Helios program on the Orphix, or do you have your own custom schedule?
I don't know what that is. I don't have the new app, and honestly, I'm thinking about just getting rid of these lights.
How come?
They keep breaking.
Oh, that's no fun.
Yeah. So that one is broken right now.
Hmm.
So like, um, I if I could do it another way, I would be using the Phillips Coral Care, and that's probably the direction in which I'll be going after I can raise enough gargantuan wad of money to buy like that.
Yep. So on that note of raising money, do you sell your coral?
I do sell my coral. That's kind of like I am a resident, but
Hmm.
also sell my coral, and that's kind of like mostly how I support myself and my animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do sell my coral. I ship all over the country, and then I do a 2-week guarantee on all of my corals as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
Not just a DOA, but a full 2-week guarantee.
So where do people acquire your wonderful, amazing coral after their
You
temptation of seeing it, this
you
amazing
can
tank?
you can hit me up in my private messages
Mhm.
on Instagram or on my Facebook business page, or you can hit up my website, chumminghamsreef.com, and that's how you spell it. It's
Okay.
basically a play on words because my last name is Cunningham.
Hmm.
Chumming,
Nice.
like the water. I like to make my chum food,
Yeah.
and then I put it in the water, and then I get all you addicts swarming around my chummed up water. That's what's
That's
like.
awesome.
Yeah.
I like it. I like
Yeah.
the punniness of it all.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, so you have your fans pointed up at your lights. Is that just to help cool them? Like, I'm surprised you don't have them
Yeah,
pointed at your water to sneak out some more evaporation.
yeah. So that's one of the fans that I have pointed. This
Hmm.
is like that fancy store.
Big tower
Um,
fan.
yeah, a big tower fan,
Yeah.
basically. And then these ones are pointed at my lights to cool them down.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah. Can you post in the description? I have actually already linked his Instagram and his Facebook in the description, so it'll be easy to find. So definitely check out the description if you want to get yourself some pretty corals later on.
Hi guys, thank you so much.
Ah, beautiful. You have so many nice corals in that tank. It's amazing. Okay, when you moved, did you acquire your big tank first and just take everything out of the tanks, put in the big tank, or what'd you do when you moved to your new place?
Oh, so I did this very slowly.
Hmm.
Um, I've moved 6 times in the past 10 years.
Yep.
As a medical student and then as a resident, like it required me to kind of like live all over
Hmm.
and be close to whatever hospital I was working in. But basically, I bought this house with this build in mind,
Nice.
set the tank up. I ran it for like 4 weeks. But prior to that, I had collected all of this rock to fill up this tank.
Hmm.
And had that cycling at my old place, both in my old aquarium and also in a big brute container.
Yeah.
Actually, it was 2 brutes, and I just had a bunch of Bocani and a bunch of Tonga in there, and I had that cycling in there for about a year and a half.
Oh, wow.
In
Nice.
anticipation of this move. And then when I broke down my my tanks, the crazy mess that I had created over at my old apartment. God bless my my landlord. I broke down that tank and I found that one of my magnets was messed up. So when I brought him over here, it just took off. It was unbelievable. Just so great. I
Awesome.
wasn't even losing anything at the other place, but some stuff like didn't look perfect.
Hmm.
So because I had so much water volume over there, it was like one magnet was kind of messed up or whatever. So then I moved over here, and that was in late May, and then stuff just grew like crazy for a few months. It was amazing.
Yeah. So that's awesome. Well, it's nice to know it didn't affect it much. I mean, the big water volume probably definitely helped a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So a couple people in the chat were talking about fragging Scully. So that's one thing. I actually watched your video on that earlier. So you're one of the few people I've actually seen frag up Scullies, and obviously fairly successful with it.
I just sold. This is like before I let them go usually. But I just sold 2 of these to one of my friends in California,
Hmm.
Juan Velasco. He just got, you can see where it's like white right there.
Yeah.
I just popped that one off. So this is what I call the F2 generation. Like basically F0 is just one Scully, F1 1 to 2, then 2 to 4, and then when you take 4 to 8, that's F3. That's when they round out super quick. And so here are some of the examples of my skull. They're not all easily viewable here, but I don't know where I'm pointing. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Full rounded out, and I just cut this master again, and I sent it to Juan.
Nice.
And then there's a bunch more, but they're all kind of like inside of the rocks. I can't video them right now. But yeah, so now I'm cutting Cinerinas, cutting Acanthophylias.
Nice.
That's half of one right there, and then the other half is right. Sorry.
Now, a question. A couple people in the chat were kind of asking, how long does it take for it to reform and kind of get back to its donut-y shape after fragging it?
Yeah, let me take you off the gimbal here. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
So when it's at this like F2 generation, it takes a long time for it to circle out. It kind of remains like a pizza thing. Let me turn that off. Hold up.
Okay.
Sorry. But when you take it from the 4 to 8, that's when it rounds up really quickly.
When you
say
say
I
4
would say
to 8, this means like generations of it? Like
yes.
Okay.
Because I think that the more you cut it, the better it is at healing itself. Now the other thing is like I don't take one that looks like this, that's like this big, and like cut that one. Because like I look at that as like an old lady, and the smaller ones that I like to cut up, they're like a young little 16-year-old that you can just break his leg and he's gonna be walking like in 2 weeks, you know?
Yeah.
You break an old lady's leg,
She'll take ages.
She's not gonna do good. And I think that has to do with genetics. Honestly, the younger ones are just better at repairing themselves, where the older ones are just not as good.
Yeah,
so
makes sense.
When I collect my scullies with an intention to aquaculture them, I like to pick the small ones, and I do that at frag shows because it's really hard to see what size the scully is going to be. Here's the other half of that Acanthophylia.
Nice. No, it's cool that you're doing that because those are one of those things where no one would frag in the past, and being able to find different ways of aquaculture is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's another one right there.
Beauty.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Look at these guys.
Nice. They're cool looking.
Yeah, they're big, man.
They're big.
They're like team.
Yeah. Do they host any of your corals in there?
Oh yeah, they hop in and out of this box. They'll hop into it and then out of it when they want to leave.
Oh really? Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. This is Chicago sunburst here. Or no, this is Colorado.
Nice.
Chicago here.
Okay, when you frag the scullies, do you just cut it straight through the mouth when you do it?
Yeah, but I like to go perpendicular to it. So if it's like lengthwise, like this way, I like to go perpendicular. I don't like to go through.
Okay.
Because you mess up a lot of the tissue that way.
So you're basically leaving more of the mouth on each side.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Oh, I actually had another question for you. One of your fragging videos, afterwards you dipped it in witch hazel and then iodine, then you rinsed it.
Yeah.
What does the witch hazel do for the dip?
I don't know. So I buy this by like the box.
Yeah.
I like to use the Walgreens. Now it's either an anti-inflammatory or it's an antibacterial. It's one or the other. I can't figure out which it is, but I know that it helps.
Okay.
So for my dip, when I'm making a dip, I have a little chum dip that I like to do, and I'll show that here. I have this all out here. This will save any LPS, I swear.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay.
What's the magic?
This right here. And hold on. And then here, okay? this is kind of extra credit here, okay? This is Cipro. This
Hmm.
is Aqua Cipro. You can buy that on Chewy. Witch hazel. So I like to put the ChemiClean in first,
Hmm.
put a little powder. I don't measure anything. It's an antibiotic. It's called erythromycin, okay?
Okay.
That's all this is. You put it into the thing first and put the water on top of it and then mix it around really well because this is kind of hard to kind of pour on top of the water. It'll just stay at the water surface
Hmm.
and then it clumps up. So I put that in there first. I take a 5-gallon bucket, pour it in there, and then I take this, put a pill in there.
Hmm.
This is 500 milligrams.
Okay.
And then I put a pill in there. And then for a 5-gallon bucket, say I have 2.5 gallons in there, I'll pour about half this bottle in.
Okay.
Okay. Then this is also from Walgreens. This is Lugal's iodine. It's cheaper though than buying it from Brightwell or somewhere else.
Hmm.
I use this too, and I don't measure this either. But if you wanted to know like how many droppers, if you're that kind of person, I would say about 3 droppers, maybe 4, into the bucket. And then, like I said earlier, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. So if we can induce a feeding response by putting aminos into the water, that's going to encourage the corals to take up that medication. Now, first, before I say all of that, I literally just started doing this, but before I put it in this dip now,
Yeah.
I do hydrogen peroxide dips now.
So do you do it straight or do you cut it down with water?
So I cut it up with water.
Yeah.
I do 2 capfuls into. This is a little bit more dangerous. This can kill your corals. Okay, so this is an antiseptic. That's all we're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
I have one of these HDX. What is this? 2.5 quarts. I'll fill it almost all the way up, so about 2 quarts to there.
Okay.
I put 2 capfuls into there,
Hmm.
and then I set a timer for 10 minutes. You'll see the bubbles. This is free oxygen radicals. H2. This is hydrogen peroxide, so that's H2O2, and then that dissociates, and the oxygen will attack whatever bacteria is on and causing the issues.
Okay.
But before I do all that, I debride it, which means I cut away the dead tissue.
Oh, okay.
And then I dip it in this, and then it goes over to this. And how long do I leave it in this one? 6 hours.
Oh, that's a long dip, actually.
Yeah.
And here I did it for like 20 minutes, 6 hours. Okay.
Yeah, with a heater.
With a heater, do you aerate or flow or anything, or just?
I do flow if it's not in a 5-gallon bucket.
Okay.
If I have it in my big, like 10-gallon vat, then I'll add flow.
Hmm. Okay. That's quite the concoction. But hey, if it works well, then that's awesome.
This works great, man. I gotta say, this really works well. Kung Fu Corals is has another one out. It's the same thing, minus this, plus amoxicillin.
Yep.
I don't think, like, if you look at the antibiotic coverage chart it's literally anywhere. You can just type it in, antibiotic coverage. Amoxicillin only adds coverage to, like, strep and staph. And that's not what's causing these issues. So honestly, I think that if we were to augment this with augmentin, it's actually amoxicillin clavulanic acid. That's the kind of antibiotic that if you were to show up and you had a dog bite, we would give you that. That's called augmentin. If you can find that stuff, I'm gonna start. I haven't started yet, but I'm gonna start researching that as well.
Nice. Okay. Have you tried? A couple of people asking, does this work on brown jelly, or have you found anything that helps stop it?
Absolutely. So number one, you have to find the underlying cause of what the brown jelly is, right? Because if you're not treating the underlying cause, which is usually like inverted Redfield ratio, or your temperature is too high, like my temperature in here, it should be low, 76.2. So mine swings from 75.5 to 76.2. My pH right now is a little low at 8.57.
I like it. That's low.
Yeah, well, my calc doser, my calc reactor turned off earlier today. So I was like, damn it, I'm not going to be at 8.8 for definite. But But like I said, you need to debride it first, because if you're just taking a brown jelly torch and you're like, oh, I'm gonna dip it, and you throw it in there with all the bacteria, it's gonna use up. You're not gonna. You need. So someone comes into the hospital with gangrene on their foot, okay, and it's a dead foot.
Mm-hmm.
Am I gonna give that person antibiotics, or am I gonna chop his foot off?
It's already dead, so.
I'm gonna chop his foot off.
Mm-hmm.
Dead, because no matter how many antibiotics I give that person, right?
No, it's not coming back.
It's not coming. Number one, it's not coming back. But you're never gonna cure the bugs. You're never gonna cure the infection, because it's a dead, rotting foot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's time real estate for bacteria. You have a dead, rotting torch. You need to chop off the rotting part with enough flesh, tissue, healthy margin on it. Then you dip in hydrogen peroxide, 10 minutes. Then you make my concoction, 6 hours. And then once you're done, you glue it.
Mm-hmm.
Because glue is also an antibiotic, like the whatever this is in here.
So you're gluing the perimeter of the flesh,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'll show you one that I have it done on. Like when I frag corals like this,
Mm-hmm.
I glue, after I'm done dipping them, I glue that. You see that lateral side right there?
Yep.
I glue that down.
Okay.
Number one, it doesn't allow for any bugs to get in there, so it's like a new skin. And then this will just grow over the glue.
Yeah.
Every time.
It makes sense, actually. I've never thought of. Usually I frag like the bottom, like in a torch example, I'd frag the bottom and glue that to a plug or something. So it's kind of gluing it. But yeah, it kind of makes sense to glue the sides and everything as well.
Yeah, because cyanoacrylate has antibiotic properties in it as well, and that's why we use it in the emergency room.
Yeah.
Person comes in, we don't want to use stitches, we just glue that. If it's not going to be a cosmetic issue for the patient,
Mm-hmm.
we glue it because it's actually beneficial.
Yeah.
Both ways. Man, I just found this scratch today.
Oh, that hurts.
You can't see it, but it's there, man. I don't know how the hell that happened. Like, what?
Snail or something on the scraper, probably, or a rock hit it. I have one that I can't see if I'm standing there. If I'm down at the floor looking up, I can see it, and it taunts me every time I notice it. Yep.
That's terrible.
Well, your tank's low, so just look top down and then forget about it.
Yeah, this is the main way I look at it anyways.
Oh, beautiful top downs, man. Love it.
Yeah. I was just sick of getting up on the stool all the time to do maintenance and stuff. That's really why I built it like this.
Not for the beautiful top downs?
I love the beautiful top downs, but that's my favorite view. I'm running low on batteries, so I'm going to go over here and plug back in. But I love that view the most.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't want to be pulling along a chair and like going in anymore. I just wanted to just pick up and move stuff. So
there's a lot to be said about being able to reach everything in your tank. You know, something falls or touching something that you got to deal with. It just makes life so much easier.
It makes it a ton easier. That's right.
So on your tank, are all your acros and everything separated? Like, do you let stuff touch, or do you make sure there's a gap between basically everything?
I let them fight it out a little bit.
Strongest survives.
Yeah. It depends. If one starts killing the other, I move it.
Yeah.
But I'm always trying to induce new grafts
Mm-hmm.
to my system. Sorry, just checking to see if okay.
Yeah.
I'm always trying to induce new grafts into my system or my corals, and that happens when they touch each other. They share pigment, so.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Usually I find it's either one tries to kill off the other one, it starts to recede, or they just start growing over top of the other one.
Yeah, that usually happens. But sometimes when they grow over top, they
share some pigment.
They share a little juice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to experiment with this more. Have you got any really cool kind of morphs coming out of it?
Grafts.
Yeah.
I just picked one up from my buddy in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a grafted Setosa, grafted inside of a tank. It was
Yeah.
fighting with coral and it grafted. I didn't do that here though. I've never had I've tried to make them graft. I've grafted Monty Cap.
Yeah.
I grafted a green and a red Monty Cap together, but then it lost its graft like after a few generations. So
Ah, dang. That's pretty cool, though.
yeah, I tried to put different Scullies together, like a couple years ago, like make a Franken Scully.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy on Instagram that's doing that now. I was never successful with it. They never. There was always one that grew faster.
Yeah.
So it would start growing over the other one, and it never like meshed with it. So I tried that, but it didn't work.
I'm guessing this is a yes, but Rob B is asking, is it crucial to have a saw if fragging a Scully?
Yeah. Okay.
I would think so, but I don't know.
Okay. I was not the first. First of all, people have done it before me. Like they did it down in Australia. I knew they were fragging them. Like I was like, "What the hell is this? Like a half a Scully? Like this isn't." He's like, "Oh, sometimes they come in broken and they heal." I'm like, "Okay, whatever. This looks like a surgical cut to me, but whatever." So there were people down in Australia. They do it all the time. They're cheating though because they like plumb the water right in from the ocean into their facilities. So we're better up here, okay, guys? To answer this guy's question, the first person in Chicago to do it was this guy named Armando Batres, and he had what I called the golden chisel.
Really?
And he
Brave.
would come over every single month with a brand new Scully for me, like the size of a penny, and trade them to me for corals. And he said, "Armando, how are you doing this?" He said, "I got a chisel at home. It was a chisel." So to answer his questions, I never used the golden chisel.
Yeah.
But Armando did with success. He brought one over every month.
I would not personally trust it, but if you can get away with it, I mean, all the power to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll throw it in that dip that I showed after I'm done. I'll throw it in there just to be a little prophylactic about my treatments.
Yeah. Okay. A couple more questions from the chat for you. For the Cipro on Chewy, is there a generic brand? Will that work? Appropriate question for a doctor.
Generic brand should work. I don't understand why that wouldn't. They pretty much all use the same filler. Given that we spend so much money on this stuff, I always just buy the same brand, which is Aqua Cipro.
Okay.
But just to let you know, I did have a. Never mind. I'm not gonna. That's kind of. Never mind.
All right. Can you ask him if he's dosing bacteria at all? Do you do any bacteria dosing supplementation?
Yeah, I do. That's the other way that I drop my nutrients when they're too high, and I can't when it's blinking 200. I'll throw some Microbacter 7 in there. I'll throw some Microbacter Clean in there.
Mm-hmm.
Never more than the recommended dose. And that brings down my nutrients very nicely in the same nice ratio that I want them to be brought down in.
Nice.
There's another brand called Biodigest that I'm playing around with now. My friend brought some over, so I've been using that as well.
Nice. Okay.
I mean, that's a new development, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was like, I want to drop my nutrients. This stuff says it drops nutrients, so I tried it.
And it worked?
Yeah, it worked.
Perfect. Okay, JCS reefing. So is the concoction just for LPS, or do you use it for basically everything you frag?
You can use it for SPS too, but you take out the iodine.
Okay. You don't. They don't like iodine?
God, they burn. They get.
I've never tried it other than LPS, but
it looks like granulated when you take it out, and you'll lose half of the stuff if you put it in iodine, especially if you keep it in there for 6 hours. But I don't really think that it's beneficial for SPS to be dipped in something like that if you're fragging them.
Mm-hmm.
If you're suspecting a bacterial infection, which would be kind of weird for SPS to be undergoing, because it's usually something that you see in LPS, then yes, you could try it. But you really need to find the underlying etiology of what's causing that issue to begin with.
Okay. Now, a couple questions came up earlier. When you get new corals, do you dip them? Do you use that similar dip, or do you do something else?
Oh, yeah. So when I get new corals, I hit them with Bayer insecticide first. Mm-hmm. And then after that, if it's an LPS, I'll throw it in my chum dip for like 12 hours.
Okay. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long dip, but I guess it's in a 5-gallon bucket or whatever. It's fairly diluted. So
if it's 12-hour long dip. I'll put it in the 10-gallon vat, and I'll
Yep.
have flow in there, and
Mhm.
also sponge, like a sponge, like a
Sponge filter.
Yes,
Just agitate the water and give it a little bit of flow.
and then suck out all of the slime and stuff, so it's not getting all foggy in there.
Yep.
I'll do.
Okay, that makes sense. That's awesome.
But if it's from a guy that I trust, like
Pretty. Just throw
Yeah.
it in.
I don't ever throw anything in, but I won't do a 6-hour bacterial dip on it.
Yeah. Well, you're much better than me. Mine's like a 20-minute dip and spray it with the turkey baster, a little pump, make sure everything's off. Or if it's like questionable, I'll frag off the base, and that's about my extent. So your regime is much more hardcore than mine.
Definitely always frag the plug off, mainly because like this bryopsis stuff. I had that one time. Oh my god, what a nightmare!
Oh.
Because stuff goes and grows in the coral, and then it's like impossible to eradicate because it always seeds from that little spot. So like I was battling that stuff probably for a good 6 months before I got rid of it.
Yeah, that's a bugger. Now with what's it called? Reef fluconazole. That's like the match to kill it now, but
yeah, but not if it's growing inside of the coral.
Oh, inside of the coral.
Yeah, so if it's inside of the coral protects it, and that's particularly true with SPS. With SPS, the algae can get into the coral skeleton, and then it's like poking out the top.
Huh.
So the way that I ended up killing it was I just threw out that coral because it just kept coming back. I was just so annoyed.
I've never considered algae growing inside of an SPS, or I guess the flesh probably grew around it type of thing. But
exactly. That's what I kept eating from. Then when I eliminated that,
it
came back.
Huh, crazy. Never even considered that as a possibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you quarantine corals at all, or just dip it and go through the process and add it?
I don't really collect anymore. And the people that I do collect from, they have super hardcore quarantining processes. Back in the day, I did have a battle with acropore eating flatworms.
Oh, they're nasty.
They're so bad. That was kind of in the beginning of the hobby. I've been in the hobby for like 12 years. And those were really hard to eradicate. There is a new in-tank treatment. My friend down in southern Illinois, Billy Gillette, he runs Illinois Valley Reef Club. He was battling them. I shouldn't be spewing this all over the place. But he was battling them, and I told him, listen, man, just throw it all out. I'll just give you free stuff. And he's like, no, I've worked so hard. I'm going to do it. He tried this treatment. I don't remember what it was called.
The Fauna Marine one, AEFX, I think. That's the newest one I've seen.
Yeah, but he was using it to kill those clove, like not the pretty firework cloves.
Oh, purple clove polyps or the blue clove polyps. You know what? Where is it? So what I just experimented with to try and kill it is using fabenzidol. I have a tank beside me on the floor. That worked on flatworms?
Yeah. That worked on his flatworms. I haven't gone down there to like confirm for myself, but based off of the looks at it, it looks to be that he succeeded with that.
Interesting.
He lost fortune though, because once you start killing that, it's going to kill not just flatworms, it's going to kill all the worms.
Yeah.
It killed all of his dusters, and that ended up messing with his nutrients somehow. And started getting brown jelly.
Ah, that's a bugger. Yeah, I have like a little 30-gallon tank full of zoas, and I refuse to add them to my tank until I kill off all those clove polyps. So I got some 99% grade whatever fabenzidol, and I dose some of that to the tank, and it seems to be getting rid of it. So
that's what he used.
Yeah. And
he is saying that he read in a couple of threads that I didn't take the time to read because I don't have them. But he said he read that it cured them. I said, bro, nah. I would have. Number one, I would have heard about it. Number two,
well,
like you don't know these little bastards.
It is a deworming agent for dogs. Like that's what it's sold as, right? So I mean, if it kills worms, there's some logic there.
Yeah, there is, because if we're talking about, yeah, exactly, they all
Hmm.
have what it's attacking. And when we're talking about this one, fobendazole, it's an anti, like, it gets in the way. It's a type of antibiotic, but it's
Yeah.
actually an anti-parasitic. It gets in the way of formation of cell walls.
Yeah.
That's it right there.
Yeah. Huh, good to know. And that was
Yeah,
another purpose.
it's got another purpose in case you ever encounter those. I mean, I think we should do all that we can to avoid them.
Hmm.
Um, I only collect SPS from very specific people, which I know that are just like totally anal about this kind of stuff. And even then, I go at them with a baster. I put them through Bayer, and then I put them through my dip without
Yep.
the iodine. So
Nice. Well, it's pretty rigorous. I like it. That's actually the one thing too. Like, was your tank so stocked? You're like, is it worth the risk of buying more stuff? You're like, yeah,
no, it's not.
yeah, I know.
That as reefers, like, there's always going to be a new color. There's always going to be a new variant.
Hmm.
To show some gratitude for the specimens that we already have, and just be grateful for what we have already. And that's kind of like my new evolution, because I used to be so
Want all the new shiny?
LFS, and I need to buy it, and I need to buy it now, and I know, and honestly, nothing good in this hobby ever happens quickly. That includes your collection process. So if you're collecting really rapidly,
Yeah.
you're gonna run into a problem because you're not doing it, and it needs to happen slow. If it's happening quickly, if you have a packed tank within a year, there's something lurking in there that's about to ruin your
Getcha.
day.
It's true. It always catches up eventually. So
Always does, and it doesn't show its face at first, but it eventually does, and that's because you went too quickly.
mhm.
And everything that's good in this hobby happens really slow. Like, that's a collection that I accrued over the past 11 years. I have my first coral that I ever bought is still in there. It's
Nice.
it's a Duncan
Nice.
from Aquos. Yeah,
Your first one ever? What, 12 years ago now?
first one ever. Yeah, man. Yeah, like 11 and a half years old.
That's awesome.
I started in 2000, and like the interface between 10 and 11, so right around the new year.
Mhm.
10, yeah. I started cycling my first 40 breeder, and immediately upgraded to a 75. Then started tanks in, and my apartment in Lincoln Park was already. I had 4 tanks.
The addiction set in. You're addicted. You're a hardcore reefer.
First time I saw a wall hammer,
Hmm.
my had this wall. I lost it.
Ah.
He gave it to me when he went away to residency. The first time I saw that specimen in his living room, just like flowing, I was just like, "Oh my god, what is that?"
Ah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Love
that,
it.
yeah, and then it was all downhill from there.
More and more addictions setting in. Yeah, comment in the chat. If a benzodol kills leathers in GSP2, yes, it will. It'll also kill, like rainbow quill polyps or xenia. Any type of that type of coral will definitely bite the dust from it. So use with caution.
It killed his toadstool.
Yeah. So far, the zoas have been safe, which is good. I was hoping they would make it through. So
That's great.
Yep. But yeah, the funny thing, I was laughing because I literally needed like one capsule and I had to buy 30 just to get the one that was 99%, not like the 20% random
Right.
pet brand. But
Right.
well, lifetime supply. All right, Ryan, I won't keep you all night, but I definitely appreciate you coming on today. Love this chat, and your setup is absolutely beautiful.
Devin.
Yeah.
I appreciate you and all the stuff you put out. I link people to your videos all the time because they're great, and I learn a lot. And I think that's a huge thing in this hobby, is that we all need to remain teachable. If we know everything, which is impossible, this is the ocean we're talking about here.
Yep.
We stay stuck in the way that we do things, then there's no room for improvement.
Mhm.
And I think that you offer a gateway into seeing how other people do things. I think that's great. So
Appreciate it.
you having me on, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I love it. I learn something new every single week. I love doing these because I'm always learning and I get to share cool stuff with people. So it's kind of win-win.
Right.
So I did link your Instagram and your Facebook below. So definitely when you want to see lots of eye candy, check out his Instagram. You want to connect with him on Facebook or pick up some new corals, definitely check out the links below. But yeah, thanks again, Ryan. Everyone watching, if you enjoyed it, as always, hit the thumbs up. Yeah, and yeah, I'm going to lure you on again one day because this was an awesome chat.
Awesome. Thanks, Deb.
Okay, thanks so much, guys.